there, friends. Hey there, friends. Hey there, patrons. Hey there, YouTube channel members, squishers. Hey there, all of you guys who might be new to the channel. Coming in from the giant True History of the First Man unauthorized heretical documentary. Really appreciate you guys watching that. And also some of you new subscribers coming in from the Battles video, the Battles of Season 3, Fire and Blood Battle Breakdown. That video was hidden by the YouTube algorithm for a couple weeks, and now it is being unhidden. The unveiling. It's getting around, so again, thank you guys for watching that. Had a lot of fun putting that together, so it's very satisfying to see that get around. You guys know how I feel about maps. I know how you feel about maps. And so today we are here to talk about Roman Starks. This is a little bit of a compliment to the First Man video. Also going to hype up our What's Under Winterfell video, which is coming soon. And so now you will be joining us atop the high tower. We are coming to you live from Lord Layton's study. Hey there, friends. First person to get my visual joke gets a free t-shirt. First person in the chat to get the joke, free shirt. I'll just wait and see who gets that as I bring on my guest, Sean, who also has a joke in his t-shirt. You don't... Venice, Italy, that's right. Bong full of snakes. Roman Starks. I'm going to the beach. We're going to Venice Beach. Okay, I'm not going to wear these shades all day. And I'm not going to... This towel's going to go. There it was. Who was that? Maynard James Plum.
Bong full of snakes.
Bong full of snakes. If you could send an email to lightbdv, like Lightbringer David, lightbdv at gmail.com, we will get you a shirt. So there you go. There's a Venice Beach in Florida. I bet there's a few.
Technically, there's a Venice Beach in Venice. You just would not call it that.
You just call it the beach.
Yeah, or, you know, sometimes a day it's a beach, sometimes a day it is not.
Yeah. So where's the Winterfell bathhouse? This is the Winterfell sauna behind me. That's where we are. We're in Deepwood sauna. Well, they have the hot pools. They could easily make a sauna, actually.
They have a bathhouse at Harrenhal. They decided not to have a really hot, nice one in Winterfell. That decision vexes me.
Maybe George just has it. He's going to gardener it in. Ramsay would have smashed it, though. It's unfortunately. So yeah, we are here to talk about. What was it? What'd you say?
I said George the nudist spent a lot of time. He enjoyed those kinds of things.
That's what I'm saying. You know, you don't got to picture it, but it's probably true. So we're here to talk about Roman Starks. I do have my. We don't throw the word expert around here. We're just people who have researched stuff a little bit, some stuff more than other stuff. And so, yeah, I was working on the Under Winterfell video, which is coming out not this week, but next week. This week, Dothraki Part 2. Oh, yes. Ancestors of the Dothraki and Sarnori. Week after, What's Under Winterfell. That's right. I am slamming you with gigantic Ice and Fire lore videos right before House of the Dragon because you guys like that stuff better, quite honestly. And we'll talk about House of the Dragon plenty during the season. And we're actually going to talk about House of the Dragon today, too. I got some questions from my Discord. And once we open it up, you guys in the chat can feel free to throw your House of the Dragon questions at us, and we will talk about it. But yes, Roman Starks, I was writing the script for Under Winterfell, and it suddenly occurred to me that Rome... see, I don't think about the Roman Empire. You guys know, Proto-Indo-European expansion, and they're mingling with other cultures. That's my Roman Empire. And so what I'm interested in with the Romans is the origin, the founding myth of Romulus and Remus suckled by a wolf mother. And I was like, wait a minute, in a secret place? And then it was the hills, the fact that Winterfell is on these hills that weren't leveled. And I was like, wait, Rome was built on 7 hills. And Rome has aqueducts. And Winterfell has hot water piping through the walls. I was like, hot damn, there might be something here. So I started jotting down some notes. Me and Sean confabbed. And now we have this stream today. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We think of Sean Valeria when we think of the Roman Empire in Ice and Fire. And certainly, you know, It's a little bit Atlantis, a little bit Fourth Reich, and a little bit Roman Empire. There's some other things going on. But actually, Winterfell and the Starks, not just Winterfell. There's Marc, Antony, Ned parallels. So we're going to cook today with the Roman Starks. We're going to talk House of the Dragon. We'll get in a little Barrow Kings, Barrow Whites from Tolkien discussion too. And that's what we got. And the Discord, it can be free, actually. That is basically, it's just a very mildly gate-kept, happy portion of the internet that we do here. And if you want a password to that or an invite to that, you can either join Patreon or join at YouTube channel member Squisher with the subscribe button. But if you're short on funds and you want to be part of the fun, we can do that. You can sign up for Patreon for free and you'll still get an invite. And then sooner or later, you'll end up giving me that sweet $5 a month. Oh, yes. So, yeah, you can actually join for free. The point is just to keep it friendly, and it's been working so far. We've got several thousand people in there, and there's hardly ever any drama, that at least that I hear about. So who knows what goes on in the back alleys of the Discord. But for the most part, yeah. So, and Sean, since you are bringing your expertise to the channel, I would like to talk about what you're doing. You have an active Patreon where you put out a lot of content, as well as your YouTube channel, Hero with 1,000 Voices. And in honor of Grey Waste Tim, you have worn a Tim t-shirt.
Yeah, it's kind of doing two things here. We got there are those who call me Tim from Monty Python. So shout out Grey Waste Tim, but also please go see my King Arthur videos on YouTube. The last one came out more recently since I've been on the show here. So it's kind of I'm pretty proud of it as far as, getting into King Arthur lore and then going over Gawain and the Green Knight. And I really enjoyed making it, and I'm proud of the finished product there. I'm also at this moment working on a Patreon video. It's filmed. I'm editing it right now. And it's the second part in a series on the Greek gods and where they came from, because it gets really weird. Greece was really at a crossroads for those Proto-Indo-European peoples. And influences came from everywhere, and it gets very interesting and very crazy very quickly, more than most mythologies. So, and they wrote everything down, which is nice. So it was originally going to be the second of 2 videos. It is now the second of 4 videos. So please, if you like my content, please subscribe to the Patreon. Check that out.
As you can see, lots of content here. And you know what? Should have done this already. I'm going to go ahead and join your Patreon there, Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Continue with PayPal. Hopefully there's no personal information on here. We're just being spontaneous here. I've been meaning to do this, quite honestly, because I'm eating up your King Arthur videos, and, I want to see the rest of it. So there we go. We've joined. You can join David Lightbringer or other creators such as...
I did put you under the recommended there, yeah.
There you go. See, that was so easy. It's so easy, especially if you've done Patreon before. You don't even have to enter your info. You can just... And there you go. And now I have access to the sweet Hero with 1,000 Voices content. The stuff he whispers in the dark.
Yeah, and our Discord.
And our Discord, in case I need more Discord...
Yeah, I don't think you need more Discord, but if you did want to join our Patreon, I have a few members of my Patreon who do a great job of making that Discord a fun place. They have watch parties nearly every day now. There's a book club every week. There's a Dungeons and Dragons group going on. A lot of discussion, a lot of people posting their skin changer animals, that kind of stuff. So it's a nice place.
There you go. There you go. And of course, once you're on Discord, it's easy to join different Discords and message people between them. So it's pretty seamlessly integrated in a way that I almost understand. So yeah. I've got
better at it. I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better.
We both do have some great mods that we are endlessly grateful for, keeping things on the rails. So with that said, Rome, built on 7 hills. Sean, from what I know, they were originally like their own little villages, because you're talking about a bunch of little tribes and groups, and eventually this sort of unified, and or Romulus and Remus. I mean, it's one of those two, right?
Yeah, it gets really messy because the history of Rome is so mythologized between the Romulus and Remus story and then the kind of backtracking they did when they retroactively made Aeneas a descendant. Um, and it's hard to know exactly what was going on, but we do know that people had settled the area and that there are 7 hills, and that the city of Rome was eventually kind of built around it. So, whatever is kind of embellished, that is the basic fact of Rome. It's built on 7 hills, and those hills are mostly still there today.
Yeah, they've got famous names, so you can't level them now.
Yeah.
I know there's Apennine Hill, and some of the other ones?
One of the hills is like the hill. It contains some like the something of Venus Genetrix, and so that's how you refer to it. But
Do the
yeah,
Starks have a Senate? No, I don't. I don't think so. Don't think so. Good question though. Maybe
but
Bran will create a Senate for Westeros, though. That is possible.
yeah, they'll convene in the Harrenhal bathhouse. But yeah, it's funny. I had there was this private school. It was for all the rich kids growing up near me called 7 Hills, and I didn't know until I didn't put it together until we started making this video that that was a reference to Rome. But
It's very snooty of them to do that.
yeah,
And so, yes, the hills, of course, Winterfell's hills were not leveled because there are those juicy caverns down there full of green seers. Check out my video in 2 weeks. Important stuff. It's important stuff. And Bran the Builder supposedly taken to a secret place by the Children of the Forest. Probably that's under Winterfell. Maybe it's the Night Ford or Bloodraven's Cave, but probably Winterfell. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about the founding myths of Rome. There's 2 of them, and they are both very obviously present in Ice and Fire. So the first one, Rome, founded by Romulus and Remus, and this is a variation of the Proto-Indo-European, twins myth, Manus and Yemo. There's different versions of it and stuff, but it's almost always one brother kills the other, and the brother that's killed is very frequently a sacrifice. It's usually not like just a straight up murder. Sometimes it is, but in either scenario, this sacrifice enables the creation of some sort of new state. And so the surviving brother becomes this founding hero, and frequently the killed brother becomes Lord of the Underworld. I did find a place that said Remus does that, but even if that's not necessarily accurate, Sean couldn't find that info anywhere. That is what happens in the broader PIE myth. So we see with the Starks, there's a lot of brother stuff. For example, actually, I'm skipping over here. You pointed out Romulus and Remus grew up as secret royals who didn't know their lineage.
right. So we're obviously getting some Jon Snow here, who, aside from the fact that he has a skin changer wolf, he's identified with the wolf. Later, he's probably going to be called the White Wolf, which is an archetype in and of itself that you have all seen with The Witcher and
Eldrick
is Eldrick of Melnibone. Yeah, it's everywhere. The White Wolf is a big thing, and it's actually not just him. You got to think about like Bael the Bard, right? So you're a secret royal if you are the son of the king beyond the wall, but you don't know your lineage and you're passed off as a Stark. Anyway, yeah, it's repeated over and over again. We have what I really like is Arya not knowing that Robb has been declared the king in the north. She's already been promised to someone. She's a secret royal masquerading as Aery, Prince Aery.
Sansa
right?
too.
Yeah.
Also,
So,
actually,
so they're all kind of, secret royals here. Bran and Rickon obviously hiding their identity as they travel north. So again, secret royals.
yes. And so I see the questions about if the Starks are Romans, and the Greek ancestors, the Troy legend. We'll get to that in just a second. That's an obvious question to ask. But yeah, the Romulus and Remus, they were again suckled by a wolf goddess, and so the Starks They are nurtured or suckled by the old gods, and as a result, they have these skin changer powers and this bond with wolves. So that is kind of it's sort of like if you think about the Starks, the way that George writes, since he's given the Starks such a wolf-centered identity, it would almost be surprising if there weren't Roman influences on the Starks. And indeed there are. So with Romulus and Remus, Romulus kills Remus, we should think of Brandon the Breaker Stark killing the Night's King, because the Night's King, probably a Stark. Brandon the Breaker, I think that's just the name for the last hero. He broke the power of the Long Night. You know what I mean? Dawn broke for the first time, etc., etc. But this is a brothers killing thing. And then we see this replayed, Sean, in Jon's Azor High Dream, when he's like, I'm the Lord of Winterfell, and he slashes Robb, So now we've got the brother usurpation thing. And it goes all the way back to Bloodstone Emperor killing Amethyst Empress. And there's just a million versions. The Baratheon brothers. There's a lot of brothers fighting legends out there. I'm not saying they're all Romulus and Remus, but I'm saying Romulus and Remus fits right in with this theme that George likes, because he's trying to write about reconciliation. And so the idea of family members that fight plays right into that, right?
Yeah, well, and here's another kind of fun one, because we've always had we made some jokes earlier today about the Florence and Fox News, but they're Diet Starks. They have always been the crappy version of House Stark, with their blue winter roses circling a fox, which is a crappy version of a direwolf. So it's kind of funny. We have
smaller, miniature, less deadly.
Yeah,
you don't gotta say crap. Foxes are, they do their thing.
No, I like foxes.
Okay,
I used to get them in my backyard as a kid. Sorry, this was fox slander is unnecessary. They should not be identified with a terrible news show. But yeah, it's good because we have Alistair and Axel Florent, who are brothers, and one takes the other to go get executed. So he is kind of, that is some Romulus on Remus violence there. Also,
there's a few Diet Starks, the Car Starks, but yeah, the Diet Starks of the South, it's House Florent, and again, their sigil, like Sean was saying, it's 12 blue flowers around a red fox. So obviously, we're thinking of Lyanna's crown of blue winter roses. Robert also has Edric Storm as his Florent bastard. He slept with a Florent maid when Stannis was getting married to Selyse Florent, because that's a Robert Rolls. In the bed that Stannis Robert's a classy dude. In any case, there's then Robert, of course, in love with Lyanna and ends up having a bastard with a Florent. So that's like a kind of a parallelist. It's just showing you that Robert's not thinking about this. It's winking a nod from the author. In any case, so where were we? Yes, while brothers fighting, Jon and Robb, and Catelyn's obviously worried about the rivalry there, so it's a similar theme playing out. And then, like I said, in the larger PIE brothers myth, one of them ends up as Lord of the Underworld, Lord of the Dead, and the Starks have all that Lord of the Dead imagery. Their Kings of Winter are underground. When Robert comes there, obviously we've talked about this, Robert is the Summer King. He's talking about the bounty, and his lust for all the women in the South and the fruits and everything. And then contrasted with Ned and his frozen face, no sense of humor, ice eyes of the Kings of Winter. So we're familiar with the Summer Winter King stuff and the Starks as the Winter King underworld figure. But then get Robb is more like Robert. When you look at Robb Stark, he goes to the South. He is successful. He gets a lot of fame, before he dies tragically. So,
and then he comes back north up to the Twins and dies. But
he dies at the Twins, right? So there's some more brothers fighting motif. Romulus and Remus being twins.
Right.
And then quick, before I lose it, someone in the chat named all the hills, and one of them is the Caeline Hill, or Caeline Hill. It's Caeline. Oh, thank you for the memberships there. Where's this? There it is. Caeline, Caeline or Caeline. So maybe that's Moat Caeline inspiration.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Another thing somebody mentioned in the chat that I wanted to, before we pass too far, is that Romulus built a wall around his hill, and he killed Remus. It didn't come out exactly like this, but Remus jumped over the wall, and they had a fight, and he killed Remus. So it's kind of like, coming over the wall of Westeros, and then the king in the north kills you.
Yeah, and Rob and John ends up a kind of king in the north, and we're going to talk about Caesar stuff with John in a second. But Caesar leads an army to kind of invade his own kingdom because the Senate is scheming behind his back, quote unquote. And so John is doing a similar thing. He's leading the wildlings into Westeros, and then he's ready to lead the wildling army to Winterfell when he's murdered. So and the wall becomes the Rubicon. I guess we're just doing this. The wall is one version of the Rubicon. Crossing the Rubicon is obviously it stands for the point of no return. More or less, that's what it means. And the more obvious parallel is, Sean,
the Ruby Ford. So the Rubicon, the Ruby Ford. The Ruby Ford is the crossing of a river. Ruby sounds like Rubicon. And the idea is, yeah, he came home at the head of an army, and he was ordered by the Senate to disband that army before he crossed into what would be recognized as Roman territory. So him bringing an army into home turf was, like you said, it was a point of no return. It was in direct defiance of the Senate. And it was basically him taking over the Republic, because after that, he ended up becoming Dictator Perpetua, meaning dictator for life. So
that's a good title. That sounds pretty solid.
Yeah, right. We had the basketball team I played for when I was a kid was a Catholic youth organization. It was Saint Perpetua. But so for John, we see that he's kind of past the point of no return when he comes with the wildlings and crosses into the Seven Kingdoms.
Indeed.
It is not exactly what they killed him for, but it's jumbled together.
I think it's the main reason, because if you look at the way that they were ready, they killed him outside the Shield Hall right after he said, hey, I'm going to take these wildlings and go to Winterfell. But those plotters were already organizing, clearly. They didn't just put that plot together in 2 minutes. They probably rushed ahead with something they were already planning to do, like, oh, we better do this now. And that the reason would have been letting the wildlings through the wall. We can see in the meeting where John is telling him that's what we're doing, Bowen Marsh is pissed, and John's like, shove it. He does no attempt to sell it, as we know. We've criticized John for this before. But yeah, obviously the right thing to do, bringing the wildlings through the wall, just not sold well politically to the rest of the Watch. But that being that aside,
try to go with them to Winterfell, so they do kind of become his army. And of course, you mentioned they killed him for it. They killed him for it in a very Caesar-like way.
In a very, like, and this is that's the first John Caesar thing that I noticed was the murder. You had a great point, which is that Caesar supposedly, as he's being stabbed, everyone says Sic Semper Tyrannis, which, by the way, is the state motto of Virginia, where I grew up. Thus always to tyrants. It's shortened to down with tyrants, but it basically means thus always to tyrants. And you see somebody standing on the tyrant. So this is what, yeah. Anyways, they all say this. They ritually say this as they stab. And similarly, everyone says for the Watch when they stab John.
Yeah, it's exactly the kind of pop history. And we don't know if it actually happened. It probably didn't, but it's exactly the kind of pop history that George loves. His kind of pop version of the Black Wedding in Scotland is what created the Red Wedding. So he's constantly taking these events, and of course Rome, they loved a good narrative, they loved a good story. So whenever they had these events, they embellished them. And Caesar was basically martyred. It was his supporters who ended up coming out with power after this assassination, which is exactly what will happen with John.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, and they basically, they made his name their title from then on. Like Caesar then became the title of all the rulers of Rome. So when they kind of deified him, when they kind of sanctified him, they exaggerated a lot of these things.
Yeah, and so one thing I will just say is whenever we're doing these parallels, you can't take them too far. Okay, so someone's saying makes no sense. The capital in the west should be King's Landing. Shouldn't King's Landing be Rome? Like no, Winterfell is Rome because Winterfell has hills and wolves, and it's harkening more back to like the original founding of Rome when it was basically again PIE warrior bands and stuff. It's not
Yeah.
moving into Italy and merging with local people. So this is before the great Roman state that we think of. The thing is, Valeria is also like Rome, so it's not. George is just using these influences to help spur his own creativity. It's not like a map that has to keep going and everything's got to correlate. So you just sort of have to use your common sense and look for the parallels and, not force it, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and King's Landing does have Rome parallels because Valyria is Roman and that's the last Valyrian. It's founded on hills. There are Rome parallels.
True.
The
You're right. King's
pitfall,
Landing also three prominent hills, which have names.
yeah.
Yeah.
The pitfall is thinking that this place has to be Rome, therefore nothing else can have Roman influences. Winterfell is not Rome. Winterfell has a lot of Roman influence.
Right. And there's
Valyria
many
has a lot of
Odin
Roman.
figures in the story, right? It just means you're doing a Odin shaman's bargain for power. So just to go back to the Winterfell stuff, because we got ahead a little bit there. I mentioned at the beginning the aqueducts, the Roman aqueducts, very famous. And of course, Winterfell uniquely has the hot water from the god's wood pumped through its walls to keep it warm. So not exactly the same, but pretty similar. And then if we think about the Roman concrete that they used to make the aqueducts and their roads and stuff, that's obviously the inspiration for the Valerian stone, which they used to make their great roads and walls and things.
Which, you want a couple more parallels. You talk about Rome built roads all over Europe. Now you have the demon roads all over Essos. You have the King's Road in Westeros. Those are Roman roads essentially. And the Roman road, the King's Road, goes straight through Winterfell.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And of course, fell can mean hill. So Winter Hill is one translation of the name. And then let's see here. We talked about the caves full of wolves. Then the walls. Yeah, the people in the chat were getting onto that. There's two hills around. Well, go ahead and explain this.
Okay, so yeah, there's the Servian wall, the kind of the original wall and this is ancient. This is, Roman Republic, hundreds of years before, Caesar or anything that we think of as the classic history of Rome. It was a very small settlement. They built the Servian wall. It was a guy named Servius. And it was built just around the hills when Rome was a lot smaller. Then they built the Aurelian walls 600 plus years later and enclosed a much larger area because Rome had grown a bunch, become a lot more powerful, conquered a lot more surrounding area. And we see the exact same thing with Winterfell. We have the ancient walls built by Bran the Builder. We talk about the inner wall of Winterfell by Bran the Builder. And then we have Edric Snowbeard building the outer wall in much more recent history.
Yeah, and then the accumulation of the Winter Town, turning Winterfell into almost a city as well. But then, of course, the Romans also built Hadrian's Wall, which is the inspiration for the ice wall of Westeros, which was built by Bran the Builder. So the Starks built both the wall and Winterfell. The Romans built, obviously, Rome and Hadrian's Wall. So that was pretty cool. And at that point is where I'm like, okay, this is definitely something George is working with. That's pretty cool.
Not least of which because the wall is where Jon Snow is, probably the foremost Mithras character in the series.
Indeed.
And then there's a Mithraeum, which is a temple to Mithras in Hadrian's Wall, which it's kind of interesting because obviously, the Romans did not worship a Zoroastrian god, but there was a cult of Mithras in the Roman legions, which is why there is one in Hadrian's Wall. And so it's kind of like, the red god appearing at the wall. Westeros has two religions mainly, the faith of the seven, which is analogous to Catholicism, and the old gods, which is analogous to various nature religions like that of Odin or the Celtic druids. And then all of a sudden you have Mithras here. And it's a lot like, Melisandre and Stannis bringing the Red God here. And real quick, just up a little bit because we kind of skipped it here,
Well, but
but
before we go on for the myth, the Mithraeum, people may not know. The Mithraeum is that's where the cult of Mithras people would gather, and those were always underground locations with statues of gods and things. So the vibe of the crypts is actually kind of similar to the Mithraeums, and not only that, the signature look of Mithras is he's holding the sword and the torch. Okay, and so there is a scene where Bran is inhabiting Hodor's body in the caverns, or in Bloodraven's cave. And it's basically, it says, Hodor was walking with a sword in one hand and a torch in the other. So basically we see this repeated motif of the Starks as these Mithras figures wandering through the catacombs. Jon Snow, again, is the main one. His sword and the torch is combined. He's going to have Lightbringer.
right.
But yeah, and it's also it's interesting because it mixes the Azor Ahai and the Stark skin changing elements, right? So
Right.
the Roman myth has wolves underground, suckling Romulus and Remus, but then later they have these Mithraeums, which are part of the inspiration for Azor Ahai and Valorism. And so we see Jon, a Stark, he's having these dreams of the crypts, but then there's all these clues that there might be like a dragon down there. The dragon might heat the hot springs, or maybe there's, one of Vermax's eggs, or just Jon's secret identity via Rhaegar's harp down in there. There's a dragon under Winterfell, and it is Jon and his hidden identity and stuff. So it's really cool how the Mithraeum, Romulus and Remus wolf myth fits in with George's sort of mashup of Azor Ahai stuff and Skin Changer wolf stuff. All of it.
Well,
underground.
you mentioned the Winterfell crypts, and that's pretty perfect. It was the kind of the thing that I was gonna point to there, because the Romans built catacombs under the hills. So it's exactly the same thing as the crypts. They put their royals inside those catacombs, etc. And
Right, they built the catacombs first, Sean, and then some of the Mithraeums were in catacombs. That's how it works, right? Yeah, okay.
Right. And then it all snowballed. There is a ton of underground stuff in Rome. There are whole tours devoted to it. And there are Mithraeums on the tour, and there are probably more that have been buried or not discovered. So that's just what happens. They were meant to be secret. It was a mystery cult. And Jon as Mithras is no more highlighted than it is at his birth, which is so perfect because he's defended two of the Kingsguard. One is a Dane, famous for their sword with the sword and the sigil. Mm-hmm. Another is a Hightower, which is a giant torch. So you have a sword and a torch, and of course the
white bull being a shout out to Mithras's white bull. So there's a lot of Mithras at the Tower of Joy. Yeah, you're right. I never thought about the Hightower and Dane sigil being the sword and torch of Mithras, but yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Well, and the Mithraeum itself is depicting him slitting the throat of the white bull that was a part of himself. The white bull then becomes the moon. But the point is, we have Gerald Hightower, who's the old bull, but he's a Kingsguard in all white. And you got to assume that before he was old, he's the white bull. So, and he did die at the Tower of Joy. So that's a sacrifice there.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones there. I love that one. And of course, one of the things about Mithras is like negotiating contracts. Jon does a lot of negotiation, not only letting the wildlings through the wall, but also negotiates with Stannis to reopen the forts. He negotiates with the Bank of Bravos to feed the Watch. So we do deals. Jon Snow does deals.
Right. I gotta go to the bathroom real quick.
I will take over and I will eat it. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, look at that. Smooth video transition. So I will take this second to open up a question from you guys that was about the First Man video. And yeah, we'll do this one here. So lately I've been thinking a lot about First Man history post Long Night. This is from the Beef 2487. I'm increasing. Jon Snow does deals is a t-shirt waiting to happen. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, actually. Not bad. The question goes here. I'm increasingly convinced that the Andals actually had much less impact on Westerosi culture than assumed. I believe the culture you describe here continued to evolve over several thousand years, becoming more medieval. We know the Andals largely assimilated rather than conquered, and most of the ruling houses, by the time of the Targaryens, were still of first man descent. I'm not sure if that's hard to say. If it seems like kind of a mix, and they've all intermarried, obviously. Um, I'm actually going to wait for Sean to come back because I want him to hear this question. Let me look in the chat real quick. Famously, the Eleusinian mystery cult from Greece was very well known, but you had to be initiated to participate in the rituals. Indeed. Yeah, thank you everyone who watched the First Man video. It is basically got the best 1 week start that I've had on a video. So I really appreciate you guys watching and enjoying that. So Sean, I'll add you back here. And so this question is questioning the Andals and the First Men, and how much of the stuff that's attributed to the Andals really came from the Andals. So the things usually attributed to the Andals: religion, knights, architecture, literacy, iron. I think the only thing we can really say for sure are religion of the Faith of the Seven and ironworking. The First Men seem to already have had a rich tradition of warrior heroes and champions, true, and it looks to me like this was just given a religious veneer with the adoption of the Faith of the Seven in the form of knighthood, and that I totally agree with. Warrior tradition in the North does not seem substantially different from south of the Neck, just more about oaths of loyalty than knightly religious vows, for sure. Architecture seems very doubtful. I love this point. Most of the impressive structures of Westeros are attributed to the First Men, and castles in general would be a natural evolution from their old ring forts. I also think of the Andals, who are described early on as raiding and invading migratory religious zealots. They don't really give any indication that they would have a strong architectural tradition. And they didn't build jack squat in Essos that we've ever heard of. Or maybe it's all ruins and stuff, but we've never heard of them building anything over there. And the same applies to literacy. As far as I'm aware, there are no written Faith of the Seven texts that originate from the Andals. So that's actually wrong. The seven-pointed star supposedly was set down in Andalos.
Right.
That may not be true, though. I mean,
Yeah,
let's see.
you never know with those histories.
Only their inscribed star symbols. Right. We knew they were basically carving things on rocks. The First Men had runes, and the Maesters were already long established at that point and apparently had contact with Essosi scholars. I suspect it's actually the other way around, and that the Maester influence led to the more civilized and text-oriented version of the faith. So I love this point about the Citadel, because the Citadel we think about it as Old Town, and the Citadel is all under the Faith of the Seven. That's only after the conquest. Before
Right.
the Citadel was begun in the days of Uthor Hightower and stuff. I mean, that might be a great Empire of the Dawn thing. We don't know how far back that is. And that's always been the point of culture. That's the high point of culture and knowledge in Westeros. And Old Town is a port town that, to the reader's point, does have contact with other cities like Essos and stuff. So writing may have come to Westeros, anyway. There's lots of ways it could have come. And eventually the sort of Andal revisionist history is like, oh yeah, the Andals invented all this stuff. But most likely the better, it even says when they talk about the castles, it says that the First Men and the early Andals built square towers and that round towers came later. So even the Maesters are saying the round tower development is something that happened in Westeros after the Andals came there. So at that point, you can't really say that's an Andal thing. It's really that just developed in Westeros after the Andals got there. So pretty interesting comments here. What do you think of all that?
Definitely a lot of jumbled history. When the Andals are invading in the Vale, we get a snapshot there. And what it looks like, they look like the very barbaric version of the Germanic tribes coming into England.
Very much so.
And obviously, hundreds of years later, they started getting serious with building real castles rather than, kind of small keeps. It's kind of the analogy is good with the round towers coming later. Round towers is a more advanced building technique because when you catapult things, they're more likely to kind of, come off the round towers. If they hit a wall, a straight wall directly, it's more likely to just smash it. Um, so it is, we are kind of seeing a technological difference between what we're actually presented with when the Andals first come through and the very civilized, uh, Faith of the Seven driven, scholarly Andals that we get later. And it's, they kind of try to present it the same a lot of the way through when it's clear that those are not similar people. It's very much the kind of joining of the Anglo-Saxons and the native Celts that made English culture. And it seems to be the same with the first men and the Andals. The joining is really what made it work.
Yeah, and this could be a somewhat of a misconception that's just arisen in the fandom. Might not even be able to blame this all on the Maesters. It's just your head sort of squishing the title. The Andals are associated with this advanced stuff, so they brought all the stuff to Westeros. Well, no, actually, a lot of it developed in Westeros, which then would have been as a result of the merging, because everything south of the Neck, it's First Men and Andals merging all over the place, intermarrying, fighting for a while, and then intermarrying. Treaties is a big mix. So the Andal invasion, I've talked about the Andal invasion at length. We did a 5-hour stream on it, and I did a produced video about the Andals. And yes, it's mostly seems to be modeled on the Saxons, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes coming to England and stuff like that, which was part migration and part invasion. It was gradual and piecemeal. They're different. Like I said, Saxons, Angles, those are different tribes. They're just related from a similar part of Denmark, essentially. The other thing to think about, Sean, though, is the Norman conquest. That is an example of basically they brought technology with them and different language and all that stuff, which then was transplanted into England wholesale. And eventually the upper class sort of adopted the Norman ways. But the Normans developed castles in France, in Normandy, and then I've talked about this, but the castle is really a brutal invention. It allowed a small group of people to dominate and extract wealth from the surrounding lands because they could monopolize military force and food and keep it behind the castle walls and then dole it out as they see fit. So it really was something that led directly to feudalism. And so the Normans brought that. Now in Ice and Fire, it seems like William the Conqueror is a big influence for Aegon the Conqueror. And obviously the Targaryens brought their own kind of castle making, but they didn't put up few stone castles all over Westeros. So it's not a one-to-one. And essentially, yeah, I think we've dispelled the idea that the Andals brought the advanced castling like the Normans. They didn't do that. They did bring steel. But yeah. And then, yeah, Storm's End is a quote. Well, see, Storm's End, they think that the modern version of Storm's End is built after the Andal conquest. So what we should think about is a place that's been rebuilt several times. What was the original castle that Durin built? Well, it may not have been round at all. That's not even in the legend what it looked like. It just said he built a castle, and they knocked it down. He built another. That one burned down, fell over to the swamp. But the seventh one stayed up. So it's over time that it gets merged. Same thing with the Falcon Knight and the Winged Knight, Artus Arryn and the older skin changer legend of the Winged Knight. They got mingled after a time. So that's just right. George trying to recreate the fog of history.
Well, there were not knights. And a lot of these figures who were clearly pre-Andal, later becoming knights, it's a jumble of history and mythology.
It just means warrior, right? Knight became the new word for warrior. And so Serwyn of the Mirror Shield is a knight, That's
actually how Arthur became a king. He was the leader or chieftain of a band of superhuman warriors, and they slowly just built him up. And it was
the Lady of the Lake, her arm clad in shimmering samite, held aloft from the bosom of the water, Excalibur. And that is why I, Arthur, am your king. That's what Monty Python told me. I'm pretty sure that's factual.
Right, but watery tarts distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
It's not. It's really not. I mean, if some moistened big lobbed a scimitar at me and I declared myself emperor, they'd put me away. So, I mean, that's just...
Hey, they're passing out magic swords, though. I'll take one. I'll put it right next to my purple lightsaber up there.
We are smoothly integrating the Monty Python dialogue here like never before. This is yeah. We'll see if watery tart makes it past the censor. I think so. That's just like a
I
soggy pop tart.
apologize. I know this is a family program. I should never have used. Uh, I won't even say it again.
Don't. Yeah, I don't want you to get me in trouble. But to go back to the Arthurian legend, yes, obviously he seems to it's undergone a lot of evolution. The Normans had their hand at it, and he might have started off as like a more of a Celtic war chief or something like that.
Yeah, you want to think of him a lot more like Beowulf. And in fact, Beowulf being a kenning for bear. Artos is from the Proto-Indo-European root arctos for bear.
Right.
He was literally called a bear. He was a chieftain slash king, superhuman warrior. He's a lot like how we picture Beowulf.
And of
He
course that
became different.
and that just gets back to the Proto-Indo-Europeans' love of associating wolves and bears with warriors. They've been
Right.
doing that since the Yamnaya days, and we see it in Norse, the Berserker, the Berserkir, and the Ulfhednar, the wolf and bear warriors. So yes, it's a different permutation of that line of thinking. And of
Well,
course, you want to fight like a bear or a wolf. This is not hard to figure out.
yeah. Yeah, bears are Kirul Fednar. And funny, I'm editing a video right now on the Greek gods, and that's where the name Artemis comes from. It's why she has a bunch of myths where she like turns somebody into a bear, turns somebody into a bear constellation. She has bears who follow her around, a dog who follows her around, and she had a bear cult for a couple thousand years before she became a more respected goddess.
They clean things up a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you always come with that knowledge of the evolution of the Greek and Roman gods, so I do appreciate that. And it is one of the things that you learn when you start studying mythology is that it's presented to you as this fixed pantheon. This god represents that, but we're talking about mythical god forms that evolved over centuries and centuries. So yeah, it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
And then there's syncretism, but let's not get lost there. So that pretty much covers the Winterfell stuff. This is really interesting. I hadn't identified this at all. So tell us about Mark Antony and Cleopatra, because George compares a Sharadane to Cleopatra. So this is an easy one to spot.
Yeah, this is great, and we kind of started getting into it earlier. We talked about Caesar's assassination and how his supporters took over, and one of those three main supporters was Mark Antony or Marcus Antonius, and he was a guy who he was
Stark
very
Antony?
much
Shall we call him Stark Antony?
Stark Anthony. Oh my
Mm.
God. Um, but yeah, he was Caesar's right hand man. This was the guy who he tried to present Caesar a couple times, like put a diadem on his head and crown him king. And Caesar was basically gauging the reaction to see if he could become king. And when the reaction was bad, he's like, nope, only Jupiter is king in Rome. But then he eventually, as he polled public opinion, he did eventually become dictator. Mark Antony is one of the three people who took over. They kind of divided Rome into three people ruling it. Octavian was one. He became Caesar later. Mark Antony was another. And he ended up marrying Octavian's sister. And there was kind of a sharing of power. And he took on the Eastern Kingdom. So he went to Egypt to put Egypt to heel because it was a breadbasket. It was a very important colony. There was a lot of wealth, but it was horribly mismanaged because of the extreme incompetence of the Ptolemaic dynasties and their massive incest.
Right.
But Cleopatra was hyper competent, and he spotted her immediately. She was not in power. She had pesky family members in the way, and basically he recognized the intelligence there and that she was capable of actually ruling it, and that this was kind of a good alliance to have. And then they started doing more romantic things as well. And they did kind of bring Egypt under, and they became so powerful in that alliance in Eastern Rome that it basically caused a schism between he and Octavian, and they eventually had to go to war. Also because he's sleeping with Cleopatra while he's married to Octavian's sister. which he didn't, and it was everybody knew. So it
And so
was
we have Ned Stark falling in love with Ashara Dane. And the connection here with Ashara Dane and Cleopatra is that George compares Ashara Dane to Liz Taylor, who played Cleopatra in a movie that surely made a big influence on George from 1963. So that's part of the how this got into George's brain. So yeah, Ned falls in love with Ashara. Maybe he's the father of Ashara's baby that died while he had a political marriage to Catelyn, the daughter of the Lord Paramount and one of the co-conspirators, the Great Northern Conspiracy or whatever. Hoster Tully.
In the rebellion.
Rickard Stark. Yeah, so that's awesome. And then Marc Antony kills Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe. Or how do you spell that? How do you say that one?
I think it's Arsinoe. I can't tell you for sure, but yeah, Cleopatra's sister. Another one of those pesky relatives in the way. Marc Antony executed her in much the same way that Eddard Stark killed Arthur, and obviously the names are even somewhat similar.
Yeah. So Marc Antony has 3 children with Cleopatra. Ned maybe had the one. I don't even want to get into the paternity theories out there.
Nope, we leave Maury out of this.
But yeah, Marc Antony and Cleopatra died by suicide. Ashara Dane died by suicide, and Ned didn't die by suicide, but he made some choices which were kind of signing his own death warrants. So there's that. So that's pretty cool. And of course, they are
in a power struggle for the crown. Really, he was supposed to, rule the 7 kingdoms as regent hand, and he kind of failed in that power struggle and got killed in a very similar way to Marc Antony.
Yeah, so that kind of makes sense with Ned and Marc Antony there. Stark Antony, as we said. Okay, so we covered all that. And then, so this will bring us back to the Aeneas Aenar thing. Let's talk about that first. Obviously, House Targaryen, founded by Aenar Targaryen, who fled Valyria and fled the Doom, and the other founding myth of Rome involves Aeneas and Troy. How does that one go?
So, yeah, this is something that people may not know, is that the Romans really considered themselves heirs to Troy and Troy's legacy. And we have not known that long that Troy was a real place and that the Trojan War really happened, but it did. Troy was a fabulously wealthy port city where all of the trade of the Mediterranean went through there. And Rome really sees themselves as the heir to that legacy. And so they built it into their mythology. Ovid wrote the Aeneid, and he did so at the behest of a Caesar, frankly, a Caesar he hated. And so he makes Aeneas the protagonist, but also kind of makes him as deliberately unlikable as possible, as kind of a jab at the Caesar. But Aeneas is the son of Venus, or Aphrodite, if you'd like. Venus being the kind of Roman syncretism / name of Aphrodite. And he goes all around the Mediterranean in what is a very clear ripoff of the Odyssey. And a number of things that he does all end up really crossing with, you see it very obviously in the Witch Queen. What is her name? From the Rhoynar. Nymeria. Oh, you're muted.
Nymeria, you're talking about.
Right.
And she is.
You see it in Nymeria.
Yeah.
But you also see it in the fact that, we have a culture that was destroyed, Troy. We have a culture that was destroyed, Valyria. And then we have the Valyrians making it over to, across the sea to Westeros. And it did make its way up to the north. So we kind of have, we start to see a lot in common there. We see, you mentioned Aenar. Aenar, obviously, it's the same naming pattern. we see the same AE, even AEN naming pattern in a lot of Targaryens. And that's not an accident. It is meant to be built off of Aeneas's founding of what would one day become Rome.
Yeah, so it's right there as far as, Aenar and Aeneas. So you wonder, did Aeneas have something to do with the downfall of Troy like Aenar did? No, that's an ice and fire only idea.
Maybe if
But
he'd
it's pretty
fought
cool.
harder.
What's that?
Maybe if he'd fought harder.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's a pretty cool link to the. So we've got. It just shows again how George takes these ideas that inspire him and uses them in different places. That's basically all there is to it. And so okay, Mount Vesuvius created a giant ash cloud over Rome, an ash winter, thousands of refugees. Winterfell gets burned, and of course there's the long night ash cloud idea lurking in the background of the story.
Always.
They're the winter town that swells with refugees every winter. Julius Caesar defied. We talked about that.
So yeah, that's the crossing of the Rubicon and the Ruby Ford.
And the Ruby Ford of the Trident also, that's not just well, first of all, that's where Rhaegar dies, and we just said the wall is also like the Rubicon, and that's where Jon dies. So there's a little
Right.
Jon Rhaegar parallel there. But also you think of like Aegon the Conqueror meeting Torrhen Stark at the river. That one worked out differently, but it was still the point. Like once the Targaryens crossed that river, they'd be invading the north. Well, if the Starks had crossed the river, they'd be attacking the dragons. And so once again, we see that sort of point of no return being the river there. And so yeah, it's just an idea that's floating around in George's mental.
Yeah, it's very much a kind of road not traveled in his Roman analogy. Like neither of them passed the river. And another thing that we should think of when we look at this, George's version of crossing the Rubicon, there is an esoterica to crossing rivers. When you cross a river, you have all these underworld rivers. You are ferried to the land of the dead through the underworld. No matter which mythology you're in, there is usually a river leading to the underworld. So crossing these rivers, it's crossing the point of no return, but it's also a point of no return is death. So
Right,
they
I
are
didn't even
crossing
think
into
about
the
that, but
underworld.
you're very right, and that's definitely the way the wall. It's the border between the green lands and the frozen dead lands. So yeah, that is well done. Let's see. We talked about the assassination. So Rob and the Red Wedding. You mentioned. Obviously, there's the Black Wedding, but what's this you're talking about here?
Okay, so yeah, there was the way that the Romans could not conquer all of the Germanic tribes. They were too wild, there were too many of them, it was too much land. So they would constantly ally with various Germanic tribes, heap honors on them, bring them into the Roman Empire, set them on other Germanic tribes. And then inevitably the alliance would fall apart and they'd ally with a different Germanic tribe. It was all very, very messy. And this is one of those times that happened. Valentinian made a very strong alliance with the Vandal king Geseric, and part of it involved a marriage pact of his daughter to the Vandal king, which is obviously significant. He's marrying his daughter off to the leader of a Germanic tribe, and of course, it made me think of Drogo and Dany. But Catelyn similarly makes a marriage pact for her son,
Right,
Rob.
right.
Right. On Valentinian's death, Petronius Maximus became emperor. He was kind of a power behind the throne before that happened, very much a manipulator, a political creature. And he ends up marrying his son to Valentinian's daughter in order to kind of consolidate power and his claim. And so obviously they broke the marriage pact, and Geseric was very upset. Robb Stark also broke the marriage pact to Jane when he married Jane Westerling. So Petronius Maximus ends up having to fight a war against various Germanic tribes. it actually leads to one of the times that Rome was sacked. But before it came to that, actually several years, because there are a bunch of complicated dynamics I won't get into, but uh, they see a giant Germanic army outside. They've closed the gates and they blame Petronius Maximus and they lynch him. And it's a very similar way to kind of Rob's mistakes that he made outside of the battlefield, leading to his own vassals killing him, the Freys and the Boltons.
And then Winterfell is sacked afterward. So
right.
A little bit similar. And the chat, Smart Cookies in the chat, mentioning Alice Karstark and the Thens as a similar type of marriage, where it's like, oh, the barbarian invaders that we can't stop. Well, oh no, we're happy to have you guys. Yeah, let's just have some marriages here, tighten all this up. A little bit similar. We saw that with the Andals, obviously invading Westeros to begin with. Only in some places did they fight. Other places they just intermarried. And other times they fought for a little bit and then eventually intermarried. So, this is the flow of history, as it were. And it's interesting that we've got this particular incident that sounds a bit like Rob there. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, Andals and Vandals. The comparison makes sense at the beginning of the Andal invasion, not so much afterward, but that's kind of the comparison. Yeah. So
they're somewhat playing generic barbarians here, but it works very well with the Alice Karstark, because we have to remember Karstarks are Stark adjacent. So when we're talking about the Roman emperor giving his daughter to kind of a barbarian tribe, it fits very well.
Sure. I suppose it does. And before we go any further, we kind of skipped over an obvious thing. Rubicon, the name Rubicon does come from rubello, meaning red, because it is colored red because of iron that rusts into the river. And so with the Ruby Ford, we have those rusted clanking dragon at the end of the clanking dragon, where the like rusted metal dragon pieces that came from the Ruby Ford. So he's working with those ideas in a couple different ways. That's pretty cool. Because he's talking about the rust turning the black red, and it's a whole metaphor for black fires and things like that. So,
well, and rubella and ruby, it's the same root word for red that they both get their name from.
Yes, exactly right.
Rubicon, I should say.
So that's the Ruby Ford and the Rubicon. Like that's pretty tight. And then Titus and Andronicus.
Yeah, Titus Andronicus. Some people think it wasn't even Shakespeare who wrote it. It's so drastically different from everything he wrote. But it's under pretty good authority. It is a Shakespeare play. It's extremely brutal. It portrays a lot of murder, very graphic murder, throat slitting,
most foul
torture, and grape. So Titus Andronicus is a Roman general. There is a lot of Roman material in a lot of Shakespeare's plays. He refuses the role of emperor when he is one of the main people who could be in the running. He supports his friend Saturninus, which we should remember. Saturnine is the Roman name for, or Saturn is the Roman name for Cronus. So, Kronos essentially becomes emperor here. Story is all about cycles of vengeance. In this war that kind of precedes the plot, Titus Andronicus lost 21 sons, which, that's wild that you have 21 sons to lose. But and to kind of end the cycle of violence, or at least that's what he thinks he's doing, he executes one of the sons of the queen of these people. They're warring against the queen of the Goths, Tamora. And it's like, 21 for 1 is a trade that's clearly in your favor. So that was supposed to put the matter to bed. But she was not satisfied with that trade. And so the entire plot is kind of put together around her creating revenge for her family. And it's all very complicated. Not going to go into it too much, but she's trying to kill everything that is Rome, specifically Titus Andronicus for executing her son. But also she's trying to destroy the emperor. She's trying to destroy everyone. And she's actually fairly successful. She drives Titus half crazy, but he does get his own revenge plot. He ends up tricking her, feeding her remaining 2 sons to her in a pie that he baked, that he ground up their, meat and bones into. and he fed it to her at a revenge dinner that sounds a lot like the Frey pies. Everyone ends up dying except for one of Titus's sons, and he ends up taking on the title of emperor. And it really is about trying to kind of end those cycles of violence and revenge. Oh, you're muted.
And thank you very much. Good timing there. I snuck off to the bathroom, but I heard everything you said. And so, yeah, anytime you hear this rat cook type stuff coming on, it's definitely something that makes you think of, well, the rat cook legend. And this is it's a king thing too. Yeah, it's an Andal king that comes to the wall, so it's very much like this rival king type setup.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Manderleys and Freys, similarly rival houses, great houses in the north.
I expect Wyman Manderley to die in Winterfell. He's not going to win Miss Congeniality up there.
No.
Not making friends, influencing people.
Not at all. Not at all. Very cool. Well, so there's our some of our Roman influences on the story. We didn't even get into Roman mythology because that would have been a whole nother stream. But that was just pretty much straight Roman history with a little bit of the founding mythology, but obviously not the whole pantheon. Oh, we did switch places.
Oh.
What do you know? Well, you guys will just have to roll with it. I'm sorry if it's disorienting. Welcome to the Sean Lightbringer channel. I am David with 1,000 voices. I just got the Nimble Dick voice, the Rhaegar voice, and the Old Nan / Ghost of High Heart voices. So I'm like David with like 4 voices, maybe 5. And so I asked Sean to put together a little bit about the Barrow Wights, because I talked about the first king and the Barrow Kings in the History of the First Man video, and I'm going back for more Barrow King stuff in the Curse of the First King in the Under Winterfell video. And so I asked Sean to put together some Tolkien Barrow Wights stuff. I know that there are Barrow Wights in Tolkien, and these are all sort of influenced by the Draugr myth from Norse mythology. But give us the rundown on the Barrow Wights, and I will interrupt periodically when I see an Ice and Fire correlation.
Sure. So the Barrow Kings, Barrow Wights, obviously very similar. The Barrow Kings are buried in mounds. The Barrow Wights, they haunt burial mounds in Tolkien's world.
This also would be inspired by the Sidhe, right? The people of the mounds.
Sort of. I think it's kind of a trope that was common to a number of cultures. So when you look at this, it actually comes from the Icelandic sagas. So the Yamnaya
are named Yamnaya because of their kurgans, their burial mounds. That's part of I forget what it means in Russian, but that's the way that we've discovered the Yamnaya is from their burial mounds. And that burial mound kurgan culture carried on into a lot of the subsequent cultures. And that's why we find them in a lot of those Northern European cultures. Go ahead.
Right. So we see it, obviously the Sidhe are called the people of the mounds, and they're like halfway between life and death, or halfway between this world and the other world. So it's a very similar theme. This was in the word barrow. It has to do. It's always linguistics with Tolkien, but it has to do with a translation specifically of the saga of Grettir the Strong from the Icelandic sagas, and a couple of Barrow Wights that he runs into. And Tolkien actually names a few characters in his world after characters from Grettir the Strong. There's Cardolan, Kingdom of Cardolan. Mm-hmm. One of the Drogir that he comes across is Car the Old, and that's kind of like it. That's a more healing journey there. He kills Car the Old, puts his spirit to rest. He no longer has to haunt it. His family's very relieved. They let him keep the magic sword he finds at that barrow. The other one is Glamour, and that is where the word glamour comes from, because he is a shapeshifter. He creates illusions. He haunts dreams. He's extraordinarily strong with other magic to his name, and it is it's a Herculean undertaking in order to kill Glamour. So Tolkien, looking at this, he creates the Barrow Wights. We don't know much about them other than they are evil spirits of some kind that were dispatched by the Witch King of Angmar to haunt these barrows because he knew that the hobbits might go through there. And yeah, they're haunting these burial mounds in the way that normally you would have the person who dies in that burial mound haunt it. So this is kind of displacing, and it's kind of why they're, you know, so evil, because this isn't how it's supposed to be. This is kind of an abomination of the natural way it's supposed to happen. So the way that you make a Drogear in the sagas, you're either super greedy or malicious, or you died very, very tragically in some way. Also, if you're a Drogear and you kill someone, you can essentially raise them as a Drogear. And that actually may be a contributor to vampire lore.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so we don't, you know, obviously know the specifics about how that happens. Vampire's very old, but similar idea. So, you know, they're a lot like ghosts, but they do, in addition to being able to do ghostly things, they do have physical bodies that can grow bigger and stronger, and it's all very scary. And a lot of them are actually named for, there are characters named in A Song of Ice and Fire for Drogear from the Icelandic sagas. So,
and Drogo, we should say, becomes sort of a walking zombie, and then his spirit lives on in the dragon. We see his sort of fiery ghost come out of the pyre. So there's a lot of sort of ghost Drogo stuff going on, isn't there?
Well, Drogo is actually named after Frodo's father.
Yes.
So, and Frodo's father died. He fell out of a boat into, I believe it was the Brandywine River. And he died. So him being a dead figure is why he was named Drogear. He's kind of like haunts the narrative. Frodo, son of Drogo, because that's how they refer to him, Frodo, son of Drogo. But
and Drogo's like Drogo, son of like Barbo or something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
cool. It's kind of like the men of Ib, you know, like they're frogmen in Lovecraft, but then we get frogmen who are Cranog men and men of Ib who are like hairy Neanderthals. So yeah, just shuffle it around a bit. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Sorry, another fun thing here is their presence is accompanied by a foul stench of rot, and they can drive animals crazy. So it's kind of something that we see with the whites. But one thing that I did want to bring up that I didn't write here, just because it connects very deeply to A Song of Ice and Fire, is that there is a story from the Icelandic sagas where this guy gets possessed by a Drogear, and he ends up going and fighting and trying to kill his brother, and his name is Othor. So it's like Othor, Othor from the Night's Watch trying to kill his sworn brother, Jeor Mormont.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And the other guy has a name similar to Jeor. I don't remember it, but it was with a J.
J for flowers.
No, I mean the person that Othor tried to kill had a name very similar to Jeor. So it was it's very much, you know, lifted from that. You know, Othor obviously possessed by an other, you know, if that's how we want to kind of call that magic. But yeah.
People were accusing me of using hairspray in the chat, Sean. I do not. I towel dry my hair. That's my secret. Like, get it. I just like kind of aggressively towel dry it, and that gives me my lift and action there. So that's, I don't know.
Oh, I use hairspray. There's hairspray in there for sure. A lot of it.
So there you go. Yeah. Oh, there's Jarman Buckwell too. Yeah, he's got a lot of good symbolism. Okay, so now when we think about, so this all like tracks on to the whites, but what about the Barrow King? The Barrow King is this figure, you know, he's one of the early First Man Kings. The Barrow lands are this whole region where there are burial mounds. Again, I bring up the Yamnaya and the Kurgans and some of their descendant cultures which were known for these burial mounds. Like, it's sort of become a generic idea, the burial mound, but it actually is specifically tied to PIE descendant cultures. And we see these mounds all over the Barrowlands. Now, George links it to the magical stuff when he says, oh, Night's Queen might have been a lady of House Dustin and thus a Barrow Queen. And that's how the idea came, that she's like ghostly or something. But it's really what it is, that the others, George calls them Icy Ice She. Eyes She. And so basically what it means is that they are undead, essentially. There doesn't have to be specific mounds in the north. George does have like mounds of snow in one scene where he's referencing it. It's in Ice Spiders, I think. I put that stuff. But basically what's going on is that the Barrowlands are a real world place that he can show us some of the symbolism that applies to the whites and the others. And then he says maybe Night's Queen was a Dustin to sort of link those two together.
Well, and you bringing up the idea that this is like the she, when I'm talking about the Drogir from the Icelandic sagas, the fact that those are similar is something that George is playing with. That is entirely the point. The Drogir have much more sinister implications, whereas the she just have bad press. They were the Tuatha De Danann, and they got kind of vilified when Christianity came in.
Absolutely.
So the idea is these are like elves, basically, but they're no longer the dominant religion, and so they're kind of relegated to fairy tales. In some ways they become fairies, and in other ways they become kind of villains, and one of the ways that they did that was creating sinister characters to rival the more whimsical characters you're not supposed to take seriously, like fairies. So you have, like, for example, Banshee. It is a white ghost that screams and it's terrifying and blah, but really what it means is just she woman. Like the she is Sidhe. Mm-hmm. That's how it's originally spelled. And Ban is Ean originally, which just means woman. Oh. So it's just a she woman, but it's literally, we identify it with a ghost monster. So,
and so we see Nissa Nissa with her cry that breaks the moon, and Widow's Wail, the sword. There's a few versions of that, the Wailing Woman.
Yeah, well, and it's something that I go into a lot in my Arthur videos, because that is part of the point of Arthurian lore, is they're kind of trying to resolve the new quasi-Roman Britain, Anglo-Saxon culture with the native Celtic culture. And so you get characters that are very Fey-like Morgan Le Fay, like the Lady of the Lake, and Guinevere, which just means white phantom or white ghost. And Guinevere is very much meant to be a banshee. And so you have the king marrying into the old culture, trying to, essentially resolve it in the same way that, we do in A Song of Ice and Fire. You make peace with somebody that you warred against. Now you want to, bring the two kingdoms together. You marry into it.
Yeah. I mean, you go to war against people, then you notice their daughters are hot, and then treaties ensue. This is how it works. And so Lady Barbary is a good parallel for Night's Queen, along the lines of, being suggested that Night's Queen was a Dustin. Whereas like Lady Barbary's best scene, she's in the crypts down there in the underworld, and she has icy eyes in that scene. I'm pretty sure maybe they're burning eyes. I forget which.
It would just make it would be so perfect, because that's how they talk about when they bring Shaggy Dog and Summer down into the crypts. Every time the light catches their eyes, they talk about how it's like molten gold or fiery green, in the case of Shaggy Dog. And so it's always, burning fiery stuff. And so her being like that, not only does it equate her to a Stark, which was what she was trying to be, with trying to be Brandon's wife.
Right.
But it creates a parallel between the Barrow Kings and the Starks, which is what the Starks are looking like. They have a bunch of crypts underneath a bunch of hills. Those are barrows.
Yes. And the crown of House Dustin is a rusted black iron crown. The Stark's crown is a large part black iron, and then down in the crypts we see the rusted swords. So yeah, it's all, they're both versions of the Winter King in the Holly King, Oak King, Holly King setup. This is the winter and death associated counterpart to Garth the Green type figures in the South.
Right.
And that, like, that's why I said Robert comes north, and we see this incredible contrast between Robert and Ned. And Robb Stark is more like a summer king. He's got the auburn hair of the Tullys. He is young and popular and marries a couple different women. I mean, he's obviously not, the womanizer that Robert is, but he does get into woman troubles. He does. That's true.
Well, it's so funny because there are kind of two different archetypes for the Winter King. You have the Santa-like guy, right? Who's very jolly, and he does not seem, dead or dying, and he's not part of that. And in George's world, they always clash. So one of the big ones that you've talked about before is Maester Pycelle in the Ice Cell. And he's dressed up like Santa. He's got, the red and green on him, and he's an old man with a huge white beard, and he's tubby. So he's very much Santa, Maester Pycelle. And of course, he does not get along with Ned, who is a classic, Winter King from the crypt, who's very much playing the death part of the life-death cycle. They don't get along. And and I'm sorry, I just drew attention to this because for Halloween, I'm going to do a video on The Nightmare Before Christmas. Because you have Jack Skellington, who's very much like a Winter King figure, but he desperately wants to be the other version. He wants to be Santa. And it's great because at the beginning of the movie, he's dressed up in wicker with a pumpkin head and he lights himself on fire.
That sounds pretty interesting. And of course, I did a Santa mythology stream a couple of years ago, which you can find. Did we do that one together, Sean? Was that you and me?
Yeah. With we talked about the Wild Hunt and Odin and all that.
Oh, yes, that was. I remember that now. Yes, we did go deep on the Wild Hunt and Harlequin and Patchface and a bunch of other cool stuff. So yeah, if you do want more of that, it is there. And just look up either Patchface or Santa Claus or Christmas on my channel and you'll find it. Maybe one of my mods can track it down. So yeah, there you go. So Barrow King, it's very, very complementary to the Stark mythology, I guess is maybe the easiest way to sum it up.
Yeah. She fits right in. Really, anytime you look at the king, anybody who was a king in the North, not just the king in the North, I mean, anybody who was a king in the North. So like the Red Kings of House Bolton, they're doing a lot of Winter King stuff. They're very much the savage representation of brutal skin changer kings in the North. You get like the giant frozen people like of who's the great Umbers, the giants in chains, right? They're, giant wild warriors. They're very much like Tormund Giantsbane. So we see that representation, and Tormund is obviously playing a king in the North figure. We see a bunch of representations of different kings in the North, and they're not all Starks, but the Starks kind of bring them all in together. They marry each one of them at different times, and it's a really good way of kind of bringing all of the aspects of that archetype together.
Yes, I agree that basically all the northern, like there's Morris Crow food, giving us, because Othin is strongly tied to all this Winter King stuff too. So yeah, right. George is really good at mixing it up.
So you got the Mormonts. They're like the bear people. You got Jeor Mormont with two ravens on his shoulder, right? Like, so yeah, it's Odin is going to be one of those Winter Kings. Of course he is.
And then there's one more Roman thing that we forgot to mention. I mean, there's a lot, but Phagon and his war elephants, obviously reference to Hannibal, the Carthaginians. He's crossing the ocean. Just like, well, Hannibal went around the long way actually. But Rome then they sailed straight to Carthage and just burned the shit out of it. But enslaved all his people. But similarly, Phagon and his war elephants obviously sailed across the ocean. Now they're marching up to King's Landing. Is there more there, or is that just war elephants are cool?
No, I think there's a ton there. I think he's doing something that he does constantly where when he's drawing on something, he takes the hero and the villain. So I think Fagon is doing both Caesar with his AE. AE is in Caesar too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the narrow sea, that sounds like a river. So that's also his version of crossing the Rubicon, right?
Indeed.
Once
Yep.
he convinced the Golden Company to cross the narrow sea and come into Westeros, that was past a point of no return for them.
Yes.
That was a journey into the lands of death and winter, because winter is coming to Westeros now. And yeah, obviously, you know, if he has a bunch of war elephants, he's doing a Hannibal thing. So it will be kind of interesting to see how that works, and where he fails, because things didn't end well for either Hannibal or Caesar.
No. Yeah. Hannibal never actually took Rome. He sort of dilly-dallied and took a bunch of other stuff and never got there. Fagon will take King's Landing, but he won't be ruling for long. So, hey, there's Grey Waste Tim. Show off your shirt again in case Tim wasn't there earlier. Sean was thinking about you. Tim, smiter of mountainsides. The wizard Tim.
And the only thing I fear are fanged rabbits.
Tim, I don't know when you came into the thing, but we just did like an hour of Roman Stark stuff, so that was pretty dope. You'll probably dig that. And then with our remaining half an hour to 45 minutes, let us take some House of the Dragon questions, some of which already came in from the Discord, but you guys can fire in super chat's a sure way to get my attention, but you can also just try to tag me in the chat.
I like these questions.
So this is a number one question right here. What's up with the Green Men? Like we saw an antler friend, a Cernuno folk, at the end of season 2. That means obviously they're going to be playing up the God's Eye action in the House of the Dragon from the Dance of the Dragons. They've already done that with Alys Stark having this more obvious Weirwood connection than what's in the book. Certainly that could be there in the book, but Alys Stark is such a mixed bag. Not Karstark, Alice Rivers.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
One of the many witch queens of Harrenhal, Alice Rivers. In the book, it's very ambiguous as to what magics she might be using. But obviously, on the show, it's specifically Weirwood magic. She's made the Weirwood tea. She is leading Daemon to the Weirwood tree to get a vision. Seems like she's friends with Cernunos there in the Godswood. And so... yeah, in spoiler alert, but obviously in one of the later it's right before Tumbleton 2. Adam Velaryon on Sea Smoke is trying to prove that bastards aren't all bad, and so he flies to Tumbleton. He musters up a new army of Riverlanders, and he supposedly stops by the God's Eye and consults with the Green Men before going to Tumbleton. And then, of course, we have Daemon and Aemon dueling by dragon over the lake. And, you know, Daemon and Caraxes are never... well, no, Caraxes' body is found. Daemon's is not. Vhagar and Aemon end up in the river. And so, yeah, what are the Green Men doing? You know, are they drinking all this blood? All the blood from the fish feed? The army that was slaughtered in the God's Eye? Like, did they drink up that blood? Potentially they could have, Sean, because the Winterfell pond drinks blood that the Weirwoods can taste. So theoretically, if blood is going into the God's Eye lake, the Weirwoods could be drinking that blood. And all of that is just to say, I'm not sure what the show's doing with the Green Men, but yes, I do think we're going to see more of them. And yes, I'm very excited about that.
So what I kind of wonder what's going on is something that George has done in the books is that we see people a certain way in dreams. So like, for example, Bloodraven is the three-eyed crow. We see Bran alternatively as a werewood with Bran's face. We see him as a wolf with wings.
In chains.
In chains, yeah.
Well, no, with wings and in chains, both. Yeah, I'm just adding.
So I think Melisandre sees Bloodraven as something else as well, something super threatening, the Great Other.
Like a wooden corpse face, you know, is how she sees Bloodraven. And Bran is a boy with a wolf's head. And shout out to Michael Talks About Stuff, who just made a video about, is Bloodraven the three-eyed crow? He correctly answered yes, which I appreciate. And Michael, if you're watching, I will just add one clue that you didn't have, or two clues actually. Cold Hands, when asked by Mira, who are you taking us to? Who is this three-eyed crow? Cold Hands responds, a friend, a wizard, the last green seer, call him what you will. So Cold Hands hears Three-Eyed Crow and knows who they're talking about. Bran, of course, in his dreams say, oh, in my dreams, it was, in real life, Bloodraven is this ghastly talking statue. But in his dreams, he was still the Three-Eyed Crow, which indicates that to Bran's perception, at least, the lessons from the Three-Eyed Crow in the dream and Bloodraven in the waking world are part of the same curriculum. And then the last theory is, the last part of this is the fact that the Three-Eyed Crow talking to Bran in his dream is constantly talking about flying. And the first thing that Bloodraven says when Bran meets him, Bran's like, oh, are you going to heal my legs? And he says, no, but you won't walk, but you will fly. So why would Bloodraven be using that same metaphor and language if he's not the Three-Eyed Crow?
He is the Three-Eyed Crow. We love conspiracy theories. We love, thinking about crazy stuff. It's one of the things that George has really made accessible in the series. It's fun to theory craft all this stuff. But Bloodraven is the Three-Eyed Crow. We see him certain ways depending on who we are and how we see the werewood net, whatever you want to call it. So different people see him differently. Different people see Bran differently. Jon sees Bran differently than Melisandre sees Bran in dreams. So what I wonder is that kind of dream vision of the Cernunnos figure. I wonder if that is Helaena seeing a green seer and that's how they appear in the werewood net. And if so, who would that be then? That's what's interesting to me, because I would then assume that we would have to see more of it, because it's just a one-off of a vision of this green seer or Cernunnos figure.
Well, we see the Cernunnos figure. It's not through one of Helena's visions. It's just Daemon being led to the tree by Alice Karstark.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, when he's on, it's not werewood.
He's at Harrenhal.
Yes, not on the werewood paste. But what did Alice Rivers give him? Whatever that
the tea
concoction was. Yeah. So yeah, he's doing a similar thing, and then they kind of see each other. So
it does raise the question. You're right, of whether or not he was really there.
Yes, and that's what I wonder. Is there really a Cernunnos figure, or is that how somebody appears in the werewood net, like in dream estimation? Because I could see either, and we haven't been given enough detail to know anything. So I'm interested to see more. It would be really ridiculous if they dropped that chum in the water and then nothing.
I don't think they're going to do that. I still think that House of the Dragon is running a slightly tighter ship than Game of Thrones in that sense. Game of Thrones was notorious for just leaving plot threads dangling and never coming back to them. I don't think the House of the Dragons is doing that with the Green Men. They've also shown Rhaenyra and Syrax flying by the Isle of Faces, like they're trying to remind us it's there. So I strongly suspect that we're going to get more Isle of Faces Green Men involvement than what was recorded in Fire and Blood. We already have, and I think that will continue, which again makes me excited. And yes, please do go watch Michael Talks About Stuff video. It was very entertaining. And he did have some stuff that I hadn't caught also. So,
yeah. There are certain questions about, how difficult is it to work with George, but there's no question that when these showrunners stop working with George, the show suffers. So Ryan Condal, though, you're right. He's not Dave and Dan. He's a much more competent showrunner. Obviously, there are things to criticize in House of the Dragon. I would say a lot more in season 2 than season 1, but they aren't leaving plot threads dangling like D&D did, and they're on a much shorter timeline than Game of Thrones, so they don't have the option of coming back to it later when George finishes the books, which he didn't. But
and if you think about it, Sean, like in Fire and Blood, it's mostly Alice Rivers and Aemond that have this connection. Daemon passes through there, but they've played up the Daemon-Alice connection seemingly to set up whatever's going to happen with her and Aemond and to sort of play up the role of Alice Rivers. So there's more coming for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if there's kind of a magical aspect to Aemond in the way that we're clearly seeing one with Daemon. I mean, we do know that there is some magic to both of them just because they're dragon riders. The dragon bond is magic.
Certainly. And I think really like almost all Targaryens can have prophetic dreams. I mean, everyone that we've heard from, like in person, pretty much has them. So
Yeah, I mean, it's when we look at Bran and how he kind of unlocks that, it's the werewood paste. So is it just something that they have to unlock? We saw it get unlocked with the tea with Daemon. So
and just real quick on the tea works because the weirwood leaves have blood in them, and blood is the conduit of the magic power. That's why they're red. So it does make sense that you would take weirwood leaves and make a tea, and it would look like blood, which is what it looks like in that bowl that she's pestiling up there. So I like the weirwood tea thing. It's I think it was Michael Talks About Stuff, actually, who theorized that maybe Marwyn the Mage is not chewing on sour leaf, but actually the weirwood leaves off of the tree in the Isle of Ravens. And so maybe he's...
The sour leaf is a metaphor for that. So it would be pretty fantastic if we were skipping straight past the metaphor of all these people with bloody mouths because of the sour red leaf, which is clearly meant to represent weirwood leaf. And then he's doing it for real, and it would be pretty great. And
I dig it.
And it is blood. That's the important part, because we don't learn a lot about magic. George does not make his rules for magic very transparent. We do not have spell books lying around, but all magic has a price. And what we've seen is that any serious magic requires blood.
That is right. And blood is a conduit of magic. So yeah. Definitely more green men coming. Is Sir Harold Westerling just gone and vanished? I don't know. We haven't heard from him in a long time.
He's Sir Barristan.
Let me see
if the show he's doing exactly Sir Barristan's plot beat. He's the older Lord Commander of the King's Guard who gets Barristan was kind of shunted aside. Sir Harold Westerling at least took kind of a moral stand here instead of being kicked out. He left. He was one of the only people who was able to leave, and he had enough respect to where they wouldn't kill him to keep their conspiracy quiet. And he's probably going to go to, the other side. He's probably going to go try to find Rhaenyra. Although, and that would make a lot of sense because Barristan went and found
Dany.
Daenerys.
Yeah. Yep. But we haven't seen him yet. We hopefully will see him back this season.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did not see him in season 2. So let's see here. According to Sean and David's best estimates, season 3, it really seems like Tumbleton is going to be the conclusion of season 3. Not only because it's the big battle that is just kind of sitting there at that point, it's because after Tumbleton, everything changes. Hugh and Ulf have gone over to the Greens. There's seemingly nothing standing between the Green Army and King's Landing, so everyone in King's Landing thinks they're about to be taken. And it seems like a very logical place to leave the season. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and one thing that we used to see in Game of Thrones a lot is that they would have a big climactic battle or a big climactic scene of some kind, and that would be in the second to last episode, and then they would spend the last episode kind of just showing how chaotic it has made the
you
rest
might have
of the
like Aegon and
plotline.
Sunfire last
Right.
episode
Well,
or something.
What I've noticed in Dance or in not Dance of the Dragons, in House of the Dragon, is that they're not doing that. They're okay with it ending on the kind of climactic scene. So like, I don't know if you want to look at it that way. I mean, maybe the climactic scene is Viserys's death in the second to last episode in season 1, and then they're kind of all dealing with that, and then what's his face gets chomped.
Yeah, the chomping and Rhaenyra declaring war on Dragonstone, the miscarriage of the dragon baby. Season 2 was cut 2 episodes earlier than it was meant to,
Right.
so that was sort of a ad hoc ending they put together.
Right.
Do you think they'll focus any more on the dagger? Ever since they introduced it, I've always wondered how it got to Robert Baratheon's possession and then Joffrey. Well, it's obviously going to lay around in King's Landing in the treasury or something for somebody to discover. But yeah, I do think they should mention it. Obviously, they made a big deal about it in season 1. Aemond has it. So maybe it'll play into the Aemond Alice Rivers drama at Harrenhal. I would think that it might. That's probably where I would look for it.
I agree. I think it has to, and partially because of how they portrayed it. Um, we have all this, Azor Ahai, Nissa Nissa, and Nissa Nissa dying in childbirth. And one of the big clues, if we look back at Schmendrick, right? Remember the Schmendrick essay? It's all about how Lightbringer is really, a sword. And when we say sword, it means a person who wields a sword. It's a warrior. Lightbringer is a warrior. It's not an actual sword. He is the child of Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa. So when we have that scene where Aegon and Sunfire go down, it's a birthing scene. And so what is a baby sword? A dagger. So we have a baby Valyrian steel dagger. This is like a dragon baby or a dragon person baby in the way that they presented it. Even where he's, maybe going to kill Aegon, the way he's crouching, it's like he's delivering the baby. He's at the place where the baby would be delivered from Sunfire. So like all the entire scene is very much the way George would arrange it in a birth. So this is the heir to the throne in symbolic terms. So when you talk about the arc with Aemond and Alice Rivers, one of the big points of that arc is that Alice Rivers says she's carrying Aemond's baby and that he's the true heir to Westeros. So
yeah, I do think they're playing that up. You hear this quote about a new line of unsullied kings that sounds like it's Aemond talking. So
that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the dagger is there, because the dagger is a symbol for that baby heir.
Well, that may be unintentional on the part of the book people, or maybe it's not. But I do think that, like, if we're going to talk about Aemond seeing himself as the future of the house, it makes sense that the prophecy would come up with Alice. And Alice Rivers, she brings Daemon to the Weirwood, and what does the Weirwood show him? A bunch of Prince that was promised stuff, essentially. Dany and Bloodraven and things like that. So probably something similar with Aemond will happen at Harrenhal, where the old gods are introducing him to this concept that, like, though there's a bigger purpose beyond this. How Aemond will react to that, hard to say. It sounds like maybe he thinks, oh, I'm the one, my bloodline, something like that.
Sorry, I kind of talked over you a couple of times. I was lagging a bit and your sound got cut off, so I didn't mean to talk over you there. But Aemond being the one who I think he's actually going to see more than Daemon when all this goes on, and that's why the kind of relationship between he and Alice Rivers is going to happen more clearly. And I think he's going to misinterpret prophecy and think that he's the prince that was promised, and so he can't die, and that's why he's okay fighting Daemon. And it's just so perfectly done, because him as a seer, when he's already sacrificed an eye, how many different mythologies is that from?
It's a bunch going on. And of course, again, just to bring up the oath and the shaman's bargain, like, Aemond loses his eye at the same time he claims Vhagar, pretty much. So giving up a physical power to gain that magic power. It's over and over in the story. Do you think they will have Rhaena go incognito and tell people her name is Nettles to make up for Nettles not being in the show, and that way they can include Nettles' storyline by having Rhaena meet up with Daemon? No.
It'd be nice.
Great question, great idea. Nettles is gone. I don't think they're going to mess around and give us some sort of... it would really just be annoying if they did. Like, it's gone.
Wendy, I would hire you. But yeah, no, they cut Nettles. I hate that they cut Nettles. It sucks that they cut Nettles, but she's cut. Dave, I want to real quick, something you said about the shaman's bargain and him gaining a dragon. That actually works perfectly with seeing with your whole theory that the dreams come from dragons.
Oh, right, because he's getting the gift of prophetic vision.
Yeah, so he's getting the sight from the eye, because he's getting a dragon that allows him sight. And I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick.
Okay, very good. Sean is hydrated today. And so moving along here, I love Nettles and Sheep Stealer and the whole thing that they were doing there, and it's just not. It's not in the show. And so, okay, Undead Evie asks, Young Juno brought it up in the chat yesterday, but how much do you think George is drawing from the Caesar Pompey Roman Civil War? That's the one with Egypt and ends up with Caesar as dictator for life. Drawing from that in what part of the story? Um, I'll have to ask Sean when he gets back. That's more of a Sean question. Um, Let's see here. How likely do you think it is that we will get to see Adam and Sea Smoke go to the Isle of Faces? I already talked about that. I do think either we'll see Adam and Sea Smoke go or we'll see somebody else do that instead. One or the other. I don't know what the purpose of that is in the books, really. So, are there perhaps too few dragons on Hot Dragon? Should Grey Ghost and Cannibal be introduced, or is their omission for the best? Yeah, I probably. I mean, there's not really a need for them. The dragons are very expensive in terms of the CGI, so they're pretty ancillary dragons. I mean, I love Cannibal, but that's more. I think Cannibal's importance in the story is more for lore. Only plays a minor role in the actual story of the dance. So probably Cannibal's cut. And Sheep Stealers. I mean, Grey Ghost. We just have to imagine the Grey Ghost is out flying around and eating fish and no one's bothering him and he's living his best life. And I'll put Sean back on the right side just to keep people guessing. Sean, there was another Roman question. The Caesar Pompey Roman Civil War. Is that something that's in Ice and Fire?
Yeah, so there's kind of a multi Civil War. Yeah, so what they're talking about, Pompey was the other guy in that kind of triumvirate that kind of took over power.
And we should say, Aegon and his sisters, a sort of a triumvirate.
Yes. I think George is not instituting these things one for one. So obviously, he likes to take the villain and the hero and make one gray character out of them. So with history, it's nobody's really the good guy. They're all kind of just fighting for power usually. So, but taking one from each side and then kind of combining their roles, that's something that we're definitely seeing. I don't want to go too much into it because for one, I haven't really mapped out how the Roman Civil War fits into it directly. But one other fun thing I did want to bring up is that, are you familiar with Jason and the Argonauts?
Somewhat.
So the way that his quest kind of starts is he doesn't really have any resources to take back his kingship. He's a secret royal, right? So that fits pretty well into all this. And Hera or Juno, which is why I brought that, pretends to be an old cronish woman. And she says she needs help crossing the stream. And so he carries her across the stream. And it's all very symbolic and esoteric. And she then supports him. She gets him a boat. She helps him recruit all of the most famous heroes in Greece. And they go on a big quest for the fleece. So crossing... it's playing more into that whole crossing rivers thing because that ended up being a much more popular story in Rome than it ever was in ancient Greece. And so the story will often say Juno, even though it happened in ancient Greece. And yeah, it made it into Percy Jackson. It's a very archetypal Roman thing, even though it came from Greece. So we should kind of be thinking of that, taking the crone across, the Styx. It wasn't the Styx, but it was meant to represent it. That is playing into every one of these river crossing point of no return things.
Some people are mentioning Stannis and Renly are a little Caesar Pompey, maybe.
Stannis definitely. Not least of which, Caesar had that kind of receding hairline, and the way they describe Stannis's nose kind of sounds like the Caesar. What? How do they?
Stannis has like a fringe of hair around, almost like
Yeah,
a laurel, but
it's a little more exaggerated, and that is a big thing. The laurel wreath being like a symbol of victory, and of course they would put the laurel wreath on Caesar after each of his victories, and that became a symbol for all of Rome. He started using golden laurel wreaths just to kind of combine the image of a crown and the kind of green man victor of the laurel wreath motifs in kind of Roman culture. So that's definitely a thing that Stannis is doing. But yeah, I forget the adjective people use to describe Caesar's nose, but aquiline nose, right? That's kind of they use George uses more negative wording, but what he's describing is an aquiline nose. Stannis looks like Caesar, is the
I
point.
see. Okay, I got you. That's cool. That's interesting. So then, okay, how much do you think they're drawing on the World War One soldier poets for Kristen Cole? Do you know what that is? World War One soldier poets?
I mean, I don't think so.
Okay, I didn't either.
I could just be missing it. Or we're not talking about like Eric Maria Remarque with All Quiet on the Western Front, are we?
I honestly
So that's not
don't
really
know. If somebody in the
poetry.
chat knows what we're talking about here, then pipe up, as I sure don't know.
Yeah, I'm lost here.
Let's see. But I mean, I just been calling him a doom poet because he's just sort of saying, he's giving these poetic like utterings of doom and depression amidst the war. So he's definitely documenting that angle, but I don't know specifically the reference there.
You know what I've been getting from him
The
is
letters and poems
Oppenheimer.
written by the educated young men who volunteered to the front.
Okay. I've been getting from Kristen Cole, I've been getting Oppenheimer, where he kind of sees himself partially as the architect of this conflict or, causing it a lot. And now, when Oppenheimer created the bomb, he had a lot of regret and he was like, I am become death. He had that quote, right? It was very doomer. And so it's kind of like Kristen Cole is looking out on the destruction that dragons cause. And it's kind of like, wow, maybe I shouldn't have pushed this.
Yeah, and I think the horrors of people being burned alive by the dragons does compare to the trench warfare, which is one of the most horrific forms of warfare humans have ever created. Just horrific. So yeah, it does make sense there to bring up the World War One letters in particular.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see any possible of Otto's arc being changed, merged to allow him to make it to Tumbleton? Yes, I've said before that he might play the role of the High Tower that I think it who is it that drinks Ulf the White to death? Is that Ormond that does that?
I don't remember. There are too many Hightowers. So there's
There's a
Otto
few.
Hightower's older brother was the Lord Hightower, but I believe he's dead before the conflict starts, and his son is the Lord Hightower. And then there's like a separate cousin, Ormond, who's leading the troops. Does that sound right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't really care, honestly. Like they're just a bunch of High Tower people, and
Yeah.
there's Gawain and there's Ormond, and one of in. I would, I think that to answer your question, so in the books, Otto is just in King's Landing and Rhaenyra executes him. I do think they're because the actor is so good, they are probably going to do more with Otto. Ultimately, he will be executed. I could see him doing the Ulf the White drinking thing. So we don't even know where he is. Like he might be in the red cells. He might be in some other jail. So in the books, it is Hobart Hightower who drinks Ulf under
That's
the
it.
table, if you will.
That's it.
Hobart's dead in the show, so it does seem like maybe that'll be Otto that does
I
it.
think
That would
I
make
think it'll
sense
be
to me.
Gwaine. I think it'll be Gwaine doing the drinking.
Gawain looks like he's going to be in King's Landing to get killed by Luther Largent, as he was in the books from the trailer that came out.
Okay. I could see that because that is how he dies in the books.
Yes.
But yeah,
They just
we
had him go with Christian for a ways. He's obviously going to turn back and come to King's Landing first maybe carrying a message or something, and then end
Yeah.
up getting caught in the fall.
Although
So
it's the second Tumbleton when they play the drinking game, right?
it's like in between. Yeah, it's in the lead up to the second Tumbleton. It's
Yeah,
after
like
the
the night
first
before,
Tumbleton
trying
when
to.
Hugh and Ulf just turn kind of
Yeah.
corrupt and self gratifying, I guess you'd say.
And yeah, they should use Auto Hightower more. If they have to remove some high towers to make it less confusing, use Reese Ifans and Patty Considine were so goddamn good in season one. We didn't get a ton of Reese Ifans in season two, but yeah, those actors really killed it. It
Yeah,
was
I'd be
everything they were
begging
in.
for more Reese for sure.
Yeah,
His rant at Aegon in season 2 was a highlight, no doubt. Do you guys think the Dragon Mourning will be cut altogether from the show? Quite possibly. In Fire and
yeah.
Blood, it hatches in the Vale, so if Mourning is in the show, they'll have to make a very different story and significance. Yeah, I mean, they could always, the whole plot point of Mourning in the dance is that a lot of the dragons have died by the time it hatches, so it's like, oh, we have another dragon. I mean, that could easily go, just be cut. Or they could have Mourning be born later. I don't think they're worried about the future implications after the House of the Dragon timeline when they make changes to the TV show House of the Dragon. They're not worried about if this lines up with Rhaena's future arc after the dance. Like, they're not going to put that on TV. So I don't think they'll really mess with that.
No, I think Morning's gone. First off, the person who hatched Morning already has a dragon. So
Right. And clearly they're doing something different with Rhaena than Book
yeah,
Rhaena. So
yeah.
here's a thought. Let's see. If the Starks are Roman, does that make the neck effectively Carthage? So this is an example of, like, I don't know that you can take it this far. Um, uh, Troy was also said to descend from Rome was said to Troy. We talked about that. Does that imply the Starks themselves are descended from an earlier, greater, but somehow fallen society? I don't think so. I mean, the Starks came from the Reach. That's not a fallen society, though. So probably the parallel doesn't hold. I don't
Yeah,
like Bran the Builder's not like Aeneas.
yeah, I don't want to dig too deep into it. If anybody's more like Aeneas, I would say that it's Garth Greenhand, where he's like somewhat deified. Like, is he the son of a god? Is
Right.
sometimes he's confused with like a fertility god. Sometimes he's just a magical king, whatever. That's very Aeneas coded, who's a demigod, and it's not clear how, what kind of powers he has sometimes. But yeah, and he's the founder in the way that Garth Greenhand is a founder through his descendants. But I wouldn't dig too deep into it. If anything, I would say that the neck is kind of a crappy version of what Venice used to be. So we think of Venice as a very pretty city. We think of the canals and everything, but really it is just a
I think of the
swampy
beach, Sean. I
marsh.
think of the beach.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it was just a swampy marsh that people settled to hide from all of the people that were constantly at war around them.
Oh well, that's
So
that's the Bravos parallel then. Yeah.
yeah, Bravos is very much Venice, and it's always been right. But the neck has maybe a couple of parallels to the much older version of Venice, but it's tenuous. Again, yeah, you don't want to dig too deep at
The
these.
Bravos is a Venice parallel. The
There are a couple others too.
the neck is just swampy. So let's see here. I don't think Winterfell Rome needs a Carthage necessarily. Let's
I
see.
mean, if anything's their Carthage, it's going to be one of the Kings Beyond the Wall.
The last scene of the trailer. Do you believe it's Sunfire when she calls for Aegon?
Oh,
Oh, are
sorry.
you talking about? Yeah, so we see burned Aegon look up at something, which is presumably a dragon. Yeah, that's almost certainly the Sunfire reunion scene, I would think.
Sorry, real quick, Dave. The some of the Kings Beyond the Wall, and in the current story, we see people riding on mammoths.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So if
Okay.
anyone's at Carthage, it's going to be the Kings Beyond the Wall. So like Mace is a Hannibal figure or
All
Mance.
right. Yes. Yes. There it is. That kind of, and they come from the Frostfangs. It's not quite crossing the Alps, but it's a little
It's the
something
frozen
there.
version,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
There, we found it. We found it. There you go. There's Carthage. Very cool. And then yeah, I don't think the Starks come from the Great Empire of the Dawn. Everybody can't come from the Great Empire of the Dawn, guys. I'll just say that. It can't be everybody, or else it's not special anymore. The
Yeah.
Danes and
If every
Hightowers aren't special if everyone comes from there. So
No, I think at some point there is like a unification of like Starks and Danes because they're both now in Westeros. But if you're talking about like, do the Starks have an ancestry of like the same as the Danes and Hightowers? And that's no, they're archetypal for Westeros. The Danes are archetypal because they don't fit in Westeros. They have all these, Dragon Lord features and implications, and an anachronistic sword, as you like to say. It's they are almost certainly not from Westeros, and it's screamed. The Starks are as Westeros as it comes.
yeah, if this that's what I'm saying. Like if the Starks aren't from Westeros, it undoes too much of the story. Somebody's pointing out that Mance Rayder in the show was played by Ciaran Hinds, who played Caesar on HBO's Rome. So
He's
just a
played a couple
coincidence,
other things
obviously,
where we
but
could make some very fun crossovers, but yeah, brilliant actor. He's also Aberforth Dumbledore in Harry Potter.
right. Let's see here. I'm just looking at the chat, see if there's any last House of the Dragon questions before we wrap up. Guys, if you have any last House of the Dragon questions, send them in now. And then I will just say, again, video coming next week is Dothraki Part 2, Ancestors of the Dothraki and the Sarnori. We do have the long-awaited commissions of the Gyps and Cymeri and Zokora and Huzor Amai all coming. In fact, let me just show, I'll give a little preview. For only people who've watched the stream this long, you'll get the preview. Let's see here. Here we go. Feast Your Eyes from artist Theo Sick, who did my Night Fort and the Isle of Ravens. Here are the Gyps on the left, the Zokora in the middle, and the Cymeri on the right. So that's pretty cool. And the video itself is going to look like this. Oh, that was the PSD I just opened. No. Bad Photoshop. Quit Photoshop. We don't have time for Photoshop right now. I'm trying to show you this.
It's amazing
Ancestors
artwork,
of the
though.
Dothraki and Sarnori. And here are our Sarnori charioteers. Pretty dope. And should I show him Huzor Amai the Amazing? I suppose I should. Here he is. He took to wife the daughters of the chieftains of the Gyps and the Zokora and the Cymeri, and that's him. He's got the wicker shield. He's got the Cymeri armor. He's got the pelt of the hairy man. So that's all coming this week after Dothraki Part 1 was like a year ago. So much delayed sequel. But yeah, watch out for that one. And then a week after that, I'll have What's Under Winterfell with my What's Under Winterfell theory and some 3D commissioned Winterfell crypts. So I do have more commissions coming on the horizon. So again, thank you to our Patreon supporters and YouTube channel member squishers. I'm definitely taking part of the money you're giving me and trying to reinvest in the community by doing these commissions. And it just makes me feel good, frankly, to be able to participate and help create the world of Westeros, and also to stand as a bastion against AI slop and sloppy, lazy videos and clickbait stuff about the Jon Snow show from that channel, which shall not be named. It's like, there's how many videos have we seen about the trailer for the Jon Snow show that doesn't exist? At least 10. You guys know who I'm talking about. Talking about Thrones this way. You know who I'm talking about. in any case, yeah, we don't do that here. We do real commissions from real artists. We real nerd hang out and make mistakes and things. And I know you guys like that. So that's our branding. Anyway,
that artwork
appreciate
is
y'all.
fantastic.
What's that, Sean?
So that artwork is fantastic. It's very I know it's meant to be, but it's very Robert E. Howard.
Yes, I worked close, obviously, with the art direction. Part of the whole video will be backfilling Cymeri, Gyps, and Zokora based on the Robert E. Howard Conan inspirations, which are clearly there. That's how you figure out what's going on. I've got the Lost City of Liber tracked down, the Secret of the Spider Silk. We've got the origins of the Lazarine and the Jogos Nye folded in there. Like it's you guys will like it if you like my world building videos. So
at some point I'm really gonna have to get into just mapping out all those Robert E. Howard connections, really how deep the Riddle of Steel goes with that, Riddle of the Sphinx in a Song of Ice and Fire. And I mean, Conan's dad, his name was Corin. And so we see like Corin Halfhand, it's playing a father figure to John. There's some definite
I'm gonna lock you and Tim in a closet together. You guys won't be able to come out until you've hammered out a live stream.
Okay. Well, there are some who call me Tim.
And there it is. So with our last 5 seconds of live stream, who do you got for your finals pick?
Oh, Spurs. Yeah.
How many games?
I don't even think it'll be Knicks are going to get smashed. They're a worse version of the Thunder.
Okay. I can kind of see that. I kind of think the Knicks will be a little pluckier than that. I'd still pick San Antonio. But I mean, if you look at Hartenstein, he was able to keep Wemby out of the paint a lot. Wemby didn't score a ton in that series. Obviously, still a huge difference maker. But I think they'll have Towns do something similar. People are thinking they're going to put Anunoby on.
They're going to put Robinson mostly on him and just bully him physically.
I do think that's the best strategy right now for Wemby.
Yeah, I see. The main thing is that Shea he does all his best work in the key in the short mid range, and Wemby did such a good job of making everything hard for him. And that's Jalen Brunson. He's just 4 inches shorter with 9 inches less reach.
Well, the difference with Brunson is, first of all, Brunson's a much better 3-point shooter than Shea, and shoots a lot more of them. And I think that Brunson, he's at least as good with his decision making. So I've never been a huge Brunson fan, but I have grudgingly given him his props. I really think he is not to be underestimated. And the other thing about the Knicks is that they've been playing together for several years now, that team, and they are like the best version of that team. What's his name? The guy they got from the Nets. And who was on the Suns before that? Yeah, Bridges. Bridges is finally like sort of woken up. He's shooting a little better. Anunoby's playing better than he ever has.
Yeah. Well, unquestionably, they have a great defense. I just don't think their offense is going to do well enough when so much depends on them scoring close to the rim and so much depends on them having the best offensive rebound game. They're going to have a tougher time getting offensive rebounds against the Spurs.
Certainly.
Josh Hart is not going to be sneaking in there for 10 rebounds and 8 of them offensive,
The chat's like, Shea plays ball. Yeah. So my main feeling from these NBA playoffs is thankful that the basketball gods sent OKC home. Because I mean, I never liked OKC to begin with, but the level of flopping and grifting and acting from them, not just Shea, but their whole team is just offensive. And then I had to be gaslighted on Twitter for the last 2 weeks by the Thunder defenders going, oh no, everyone plays like this. Kobe did this too. It's like, no, fuck, he didn't.
Kobe was trying to score. He got fouled, but he was trying to score.
Disgusting.
It's too bad because I really like and respect Shea's game when he's not flopping.
Same. My whole thing is like, if you're one of the best players, why do you got to do that? He is one of the best players, but yeah, I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Don't understand the flopping. No one likes it. Let's not reward it. And yeah, they're gone. So I was incredibly happy to see them lose. And I don't really. I'm a Warriors fan, so I'm not really pulling for anybody here. But how can you not like Harper and Castle, the way they play, the way Wemby plays? I mean, I don't know. I really like them as a future
Yeah.
dynasty team, not dynasty, but you know what I mean. One of the
Well,
contenders. Like, yeah,
I'm
like
a
those
Warriors
guys.
fan, obviously too. I'm from the Bay Area, but I've been living in Austin for the last year and a half, and we're in Spurs territory.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
So it's getting wild out here.
Yeah. Wemby's really. I didn't want to. I mean, it's not that creative to jump on the bandwagon of somebody who's 7'5" and like so gifted or whatever. But now that I've watched him in these playoffs, like I understand why everyone was so sure he was going to be good because of the mindset coupled with the talent. Like that guy's he's a real one.
Well, he's actually coordinated with an 8-foot wingspan. That's what's wild. That's never happened before.
He's unbelievably coordinated. Like
Yeah.
some of the stuff he's doing where he's tipping in the ball like reverse near the rim, coming from the other side of the rim, like that stuff's really hard to do. So
Like he's doing the stuff that I would do if I lowered the hoop to 7 feet. That's what's wild. So it's just like
and that's
him
true.
having
Wemby is a fan of fantasy. He plays Elden Ring, and he's got like reading programs where he's named his top 10 list of fantasy books or something like that. I heard.
Oh yeah, no, and it's in the tradition of great San Antonio bigs. Tim Duncan was a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons and StarCraft. So, am I tall? I'm not tall. I'm 5'11", and the fact that I'm 5'11" cut my basketball career very short.
I too am 5'11" and 3/4 or something like that. I just say 6 feet because it's easier. But the truth is 5'11" and 3/4. Anyway, yeah. So I love that we've only lost about 50 viewers on this stream in the last 5 minutes.
Talking about basketball.
Well, thankfully, all the NBA Finals games will be. Oh God, is there going to be a Finals game on the 21st, the day that Hot Dragon?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh God, that would be horrible. They're
Hot
going to be
Deal
on
be
at the
later,
same
though.
time.
Hot deals start around the time the game's wrapping up, I think.
Brutal. Unless the series doesn't go that long, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm just double checking the calendar here, guys.
that's my I assume the series won't last that long. Yeah, they give them like what, 4 or 5 days off before the series starts.
No, it'll be over by the June 21st. The last game of the finals would be Friday, June 19th.
Okay.
So we have nothing to worry about. Very good. All right, there you go. So yeah, no calling sick into my own stream. I don't put that above me. I will do that for a really good NBA Finals game. But it looks like that won't be a problem. So, in any case, thank you very much for joining us and indulging me and Sean in a little basketball talk. I hope the Roman Starks are interesting. Again, thank you for watching the battles video, the First Men video, and a late breaking super chat from ASOIAF follower. Gotta respect that. Do you think Jon would be a great king? Also, isn't there a prophecy how a Targaryen should be on a throne when Robert was in fact a secret Targaryen? I mean, there is a prophecy. We don't know what exactly it says in the books, especially. We don't know. There's some version of it, but we don't know what it says. There's the prophecy that Hugh the Hammer hears at Tumbleton about the hammer falling on the dragon. I don't think that's what you're talking about. And Jon, I mean, he's got the moral compass to be a great king, and he has certain qualities, like he sees through the racism against the wildlings and thinks dynamically and innovatively. The bargain with Braavos is kind of brilliant. Sending his friends away at the wall was not brilliant. So, a little bit of a mixed bag. He's only 16 or 17 or whatever, so, cut him some slack. I think he could have grown into being a good leader. I don't know that we could say he's done a great job at the wall necessarily. I think there's some criticism there, but yeah, he's got it in him.
He's done good things. He has the right instincts. is kind of where you're going. And I agree. He needs some maturing, and hopefully he learns from the mistake he made, where he was not keeping loyal people around him for protection, or his direwolf, according to Melisandre. You gotta he's got to protect himself, because it is dangerous being king, just like it's dangerous being Lord Commander, especially with all of the very revolutionary things he did, like letting the wildlings through the wall to fight the others.
And I will
You
just
got to
tell you that if
understand people want you dead.
you can see what my what my YouTube page looks like. What I was going to say is that if you want some cool Jon Snow stuff, I have some cool Jon Snow stuff. A little while ago, I did a video about Melisandre and then Firewhite Ghost. So
Yeah.
Melisandre and Jon's resurrection explained, and then Ghost will be fire whited. I'm talking about how I think the resurrection will involve Ghost and Jon. There'll be a hybrid spirit occupying both bodies, fire whited. It could be really freaking cool, or maybe I just smoked a little too much that day. But there's my Jon resurrection videos if you're interested in that. This is like everything I think about Jon's resurrection is in these two videos. So yeah. With that said, again, Hero with 1,000 Voices is Sean's YouTube channel, Patreon of the same name. You saw me join there, nice and easy. Lots of content on the Patreon channel. And what are you working on again? You're working on the third in your Arthur series?
So it's out. The third Arthur video is out on YouTube. Good to watch. Please go watch it and enjoy. Gawain and the Green Knight. And then there will be one more Arthur video on my Patreon later. But for right now, I am editing the second of 4 videos on the Greek gods. It was originally just going to be 1 video. It became 2. Now it's 4. I found a lot more material than I thought, and it's all been very, very interesting, and I've gotten good responses from it. So it has become much larger in the telling. So if you're interested, please go see that stuff on my Patreon. I don't normally go into the mythology directly. I usually address what's being relayed through books. So this was an idea from the people in my Patreon that I kind of ran with, and it's gone very well.
Okay, so I haven't watched part 2 of the Gawain one. That's what I'm looking at here. And then is there a part 3 coming with that?
No, so the final video that will go on my Patreon instead of YouTube is going to be kind of how there are a lot of contradictions in how that came to be in Arthurian lore. Like in different versions, for example, Merlin is a Celtic druid. Sometimes he's a vaguely defined wizard. Sometimes he's an attempt at the Antichrist. And sometimes he's more of like a magical oak king. So, how that kind of came to be, did Arthur get Excalibur from a lady in the lake or from a sword in the stone? So like, these are common tropes that we think of. How did it kind of evolve to where there are so many recognizable things that do not fit with each other? So the contradictions of Arthurian lore, really.
So I appreciate that very much. This is basically you branching out into just straight up folklore here. So it's good background for Ice and Fire, though, obviously. And if you've ever wondered what a YouTube video would look like if there was memes the whole time, then check out Sean's videos, because straight memes.
It's true. I speak in memes.
You speak in mem speaker. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. See you with lots of videos soon, and we'll see you next Sunday. And that'll do it. Go Spurs, I guess.